All right, here we go. Welcome in, baseball fans. This is the Bicoastal Baseball Podcast on the Grid Network. We are back after a week-long hiatus. I apologize in advance. I had a bachelor party a couple of weekends ago, and needless to say, we all know how those go. I was plenty a shot after that. But we're back rolling today. Mike Guido, that's Dalton Brown. Plenty of stuff to go over today. Dalton, how you feeling, my friend? We had a week off. You feel a little bit more recharged, refreshed for today, maybe?
I am not. I had a 15-hour travel day back from the West Coast yesterday, so I am not feeling refreshed at all. I was feeling pretty fresh last Monday, but you were keeled over, apparently. That's what it sounds like. But we're good to go, man. We're at the midway point. A lot to talk about.
Yeah, plenty of stuff to go over. It is July 1. It's a great time to talk about baseball, and part of the reason for that is because this right here, this piece of paper I have right here, this is what I call accountability. It's going to be an accountability episode, I think, for us. We have our preseason predictions. We'll be going over those. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. We're just going to see how we did at the midway point, see what we still believe in, see what we're ready to bail on. What our new thoughts are as far as the season is concerned. We'll touch on that a little bit later. We should touch on the Astros as well. I mean, Dalton made the prediction of a while back saying that he still had a lot of faith after their rough start that they're going to win the division, and they went ahead and had a bullish June. So we'll talk about that. We're going to hand out some new awards, I think. See where we stack up. Again, it's going to be kind of a theme today of just like kind of checking in on where we are. Obviously, the title of the show today is the Grimace Effect. I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit of Mets, see where they are. The Yankees are struggling. They've kind of swapped places over the last couple of weeks. So plenty of stuff to cover today. But as we do every single show, we cater to our own fan bases. Sorry, not sorry. Yankees, Dodgers. Here we go. Okay. Here we go with the Yankees. So 4-8 in our last 12 games. We haven't won a series since taking 3 of 4 from Kansas City on June 13th, a series that ended on June 13th. It has been a little bit of a rough road. Losing a series to the Red Sox, losing a series to the Orioles, losing a series to the Braves, getting swept by the Mets, splitting a 4-game series in Toronto against the Blue Jays. So it has been a bit of a rough go of it, and there's a lot of reasons for that. The Yankees have finally been bitten by the injury bug. Giancarlo Stanton is out. Clark Schmidt is out. Ian Hamilton is out. There are plenty of guys on this roster that are missing time. Anthony Rizzo as well, another one of those names that is now missing time. And I can genuinely say, I'll touch on the bats first just because I started talking about it first. Giancarlo Stanton, I honestly, I didn't expect to say this at the beginning of the season, but Giancarlo Stanton missing from this lineup is really, really that's hurtful. This is a pretty big deal. And Stanton was not in a position where he was just absolutely raking, but you really kind of narrow it down and you say, okay, he was one of the 3 or 4 most productive hitters in the Yankee lineup. There's clearly something missing there in the lineup. And Dalton kind of expressed it a couple of weeks ago, especially when the Yankees played the Dodgers, is that, and they were playing that series without Juan Soto. Without any of those really 3 guys with Stanton, Judge, or Soto in the lineup, that lineup gets pretty short pretty quick. So certainly outside of Judge and Soto, obviously Judge is on another planet. Juan Soto's still having a great season. That lineup has really kind of fallen asleep. Gleyber Torres, listen, he's had a nice couple of days, but for the most part, he hasn't really been hitting. The depth in this lineup just really has not been hitting. DJ LeMahieu has been awful since he's come back. So we're just kind of now looking for answers in the lineup. Starting pitching. This is really where I want to go with this, especially starting pitching. But let's also talk about the team ERA as well. For the last 2 weeks, they've been truly awful. They had a really tough month of June overall. Beginning of June wasn't so bad, but, I mean, you look at the ERA in June, They have a 5.26 ERA in the month of June. They have a 7.92 ERA in the last week. They are just surrendering tons and tons of runs. And it's really one of the big catalysts, really, I think, is Garrett Cole coming back. He's kind of gotten shelled since he came back. And I'm not blaming Garrett Cole really for anything. He still has to get into game shape. He still has to do a lot of those things. And it hasn't been a single guy. Every guy in the rotation has been getting hit up. Stroman, Rodon, Luis Heel, that everybody's been getting hit. So it's a little troublesome. This is just one of those times, right? Like, and especially in a month where you play the Dodgers, you play the Orioles, you played the Braves. Like, these are teams that you're supposed to be considered in the same ilk of, and you're just dropping series after series against these upper echelon teams. I wish I could come here in a little bit more of a positive mood, but I think it's a little worrisome today.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Yankees are, you and I, at least I think you and I have talked a lot this year about the idea that it's a very long season.
Yeah.
And I know that that's like the most cliche thing to say, but like you're going to hit a stretch like this.
Yeah.
The Dodgers have certainly hit a couple stretches like this, and like it's fine. But look, I think a lot of it is regression hitting a bunch of starters at once. Like I don't think Heel, Rodon, Stroman was ever expected to be a murderer's row.
No.
Right. I think we think of it as like that's a solid middle of the rotation,
yeah.
but I don't think we think of that as a middle as like a murderer's row or set of starters. So some of it is just some guys coming back down to earth, and a few of them are doing it at the same time, which is frustrating.
Yeah.
I think Garrett Cole was encouraging yesterday. I think you have to be patient with a guy coming off an injury, just in general, especially a pitcher. So I wouldn't worry too much about Cole personally. I think he's going to be fine. Like we know what he is.
Yeah.
But I think these other guys, like, it's a little bit of like maybe they're flying a little bit above what they really are. Now they're kind of crashing back down to earth.
Yeah.
The truth is somewhere in between. I'm still really high on Heel. Stroman and Rodon are both guys that are kind of, at this point, they're both kind of journeymen. Like, you're going to have some nice stretches out of them. You're going to have some not so great starts out of them. But if that's what your like 3 and 4 in the rotation looks like potentially, that's a pretty good spot to be. So, I mean, look, I think it's the fact that the Yankees just put together like a not so great month in general and are still sitting here 22 games over 500. They're tied for the division lead, but we knew Baltimore was going to be right there. I think that's going to be a battle all the way to the end. Baltimore's really good. So, I don't know. I mean, I get it, man. It's no fun when your team's scuffling, but at the midway point, I think if I told you preseason Yankees are going to go 54-32 through their first 86, you'd sign up for it.
I would absolutely sign up for it. No, that's 100% right. And like you said before, and I think it kind of goes back to what I was saying about, like not really blaming Cole for much. Garrett Cole is still coming back. Like this is not like his first start. He really struggled, but you're right. He was encouraging yesterday. I mean, he was kind of struggling with command. He couldn't really put hitters away. But again, that's part of the pains of coming back from the injury. The velocity will come back. The stuff itself will come back. That I'm not really worried about. And yes, you bring up a good point of like, are these guys just kind of regressing back towards the mean at the same time? So we'll see. I think the Yankees are going to be among the most active teams at the deadline. Like they're going to look at this portion of the season, and it can kind of be looked at as a positive, in a positive light as well, where like maybe this was like the kick in the teeth that you needed to like wake up the front office to be like, to not be complacent, just kind of like, not ride into the rest of the season going into the deadline, like, add a piece here, whatever, something like, I think this is the kind of stretch where the urgency of the front office can be, okay, like this is what can happen at its worst, and we don't want this to rear its ugly head again.
Yeah.
So, altogether, not like a terrible thing in the grand scheme of things, but not a fun 2 weeks for me, really.
Yeah, it's not any fun. It's not any fun. I guess I'll segue into my Dodger rant. Look, the last 2 weeks of Dodger baseball have not been like the most fascinating 2 weeks. You're going through a stretch of the schedule where you're facing the Colorado Rockies, the Anaheim Angels, the Chicago White Sox, and the San Francisco Giants. Kind of a tough schedule for them, like going to Denver, coming back home to LA, then going to Chicago, then going to San Francisco. And like you're doing that right after you were just on another East Coast trip. So kind of a tough schedule spot. But I mean, look, they go 8-4 over the last 2 weeks. There's just not a ton to write home about. Shohei Ohtani is what there is to write home about. I mean, we're talking 9 homers in his last 13 games. He's going on a stretch like we've seen really only from him and Aaron Judge at points in their careers. Like feels like they're the only 2 guys in the majors that are capable of that kind of stretch.
Right.
So that's been a ton of fun. Him in the leadoff spot. Obviously, I don't like the reason for it, but him in the leadoff spot has been really fun to watch. So that's been pretty cool. Other than that, this is kind of a part of the season for the Dodgers where you're kind of just trying to float a little bit. The injuries have really stacked up. I mean, you look at the rotation alone with Yamamoto out, Buehler out, Kershaw with another setback. He's not going to be back anytime soon. Bobby Miller has not quite looked himself yet coming back from injury. He's obviously not 100%. So up and down the rotation, a lot of injuries. But the positive side of that is Gavin Stone is like a legitimate dude.
Yeah.
At this point, when you look at the teams that he's done it against consistently, he was awesome. He was awesome in New York against the Yankees. He was awesome when he faced the Braves. And his last start was something that we hadn't seen a Dodger pitcher do in a couple years, complete game shutout in Chicago. Now, I get it, it's the White Sox, but a complete game shutout in 2024 requires a certain level of efficiency that only an elite big league pitcher can get to. So it's been really cool to see Gavin Stone like blossom into the pitcher the Dodgers didn't want to give up in a whole bunch of trades the last few years. Obviously James Paxton, every time he goes out there, you're playing roulette. He's either going to be really good or he's going to, immediately put you in a 9-0 hole like he did yesterday. I don't think that's good enough as far as the standard that the Dodgers expect to hold a starter to. But the reality is there just aren't that many healthy bodies right now. So, on the offensive side, you're missing Mookie Betts, you're missing Max Muncy. This is especially the next couple weeks, the schedule is going to get tougher. Like this week, you get Arizona and Milwaukee coming into town. Those are 2 teams that are really hungry to come into Dodger Stadium and beat up on you. Then after that, you go to Philadelphia. That's not any fun for anybody.
Nope.
Then you go to Detroit, then you get the All-Star break. So I think the All-Star break will be very welcome for the Dodgers. This is a team that is kind of treading water right now, but I can't be too upset when they go 8-4 over their last 12, even though it's against some of the dredges of the league.
Well, look, I mean, here's kind of how I feel about the Dodgers right now. Like, I think the Dodgers, especially given like the Braves injuries, like to me, and again, like it's really kind of hard to say because once the playoffs hit, like pretty much we've seen it over the past couple of years. Pretty much anything can happen, right?
Oh, yeah,
but I kind of look at the National League at this point as pretty much a 2-horse race. Like this is Dodgers, Phillies, and that's about it. Like I don't know that the National League is as thick as what the American League is really showing right now. Like I think more for the most part, the NL has kind of like you have a bunch of middle-way teams that all beat the crap out of each other. And then, especially, I mean, when the Dodgers get healthy, and they will get healthy, like that's the thing, is like you're not in a position where Atlanta is like, all right, Strider and Acuna are out for the year, and you're not getting them back, right? They're gone. So you're going to get Betts back. You're going to get Yamamoto back. You're going to get Muncy back. Like, you're going to get all these core pieces back. And it's the Dodgers. They're going to make additions, right? They never just sit still. So I think this is pretty much like Dodgers, Phillies, and like whoever gets to be the Diamondbacks this year, whether it's San Diego or the Pirates or like I don't know,
and there will be a team that fills that role too. Like
right.
and we might not know who it is till the playoffs start, right? Like I don't think anybody thought it was going to be Arizona last year,
Right, right. So it is kind of funny, but listen, man, I feel it. Injury bug. Look, we kind of touched on it before. We're getting into the point where like we're officially into summer. This is where shit starts to happen. You know what I mean? Like this is really rare where you kind of get to see where you're made of, where your depth lies, wherever. Like, just this is the time for guys to step up. So okay, we have a short score update today. There's only 3 games today, and well, one of them's already over, and one of them doesn't start until 8:40, until about halfway through our show. So, we're kind of rolling here. Astros beat the Blue Jays today in Toronto 3-1. That was earlier today. Hunter Brown, 6 innings, 2 hits in that game, none earned against the Blue Jays. Yariel Rodriguez actually pitched really well in that game as well. 6 2/3 with 1 earned and 2 hits in that game as well. And we're going to touch on the Astros in a little bit, and I guess we'll touch on the Blue Jays too, because we have something about that as well. So we'll touch on that a little bit later. As of right now, the Nationals are beating the New York Mets in Washington 2-0 in the top of the 6th. This is James Wood's major league debut today. One of the top prospects in baseball. I think he's number 3 in all of baseball, according to MLB Pipeline. Where is he in the lineup today? He's hitting 6th in the lineup today, and he has a hit. He's 1 for 2 today with a strikeout. Mackenzie Gore on the bump for the Nationals, and David Peterson on the bump for the Mets. And then later tonight, 8:40 p.m. Eastern time, the Milwaukee Brewers and the Colorado Rockies in the great Mountain State. Rob Zastryzny and Austin Gomber, the electric pitching matchup tonight. The can't-miss pitching matchup tonight.
I really want to bet an over in that game because there's nothing else on.
Yeah.
And, you got Rob Zastryzny and Austin Gomber going at it at elevation. I mean, the total's probably like 11.5. Like, I just want to bet an over and just enjoy some baseball.
The total is 11.5. I'm looking at it right now. It's 11.5.
That's about right. That's about what I'd figure.
Yeah, Brewers right now favored -145 against the Rockies on the road. So there you go. That's it for our score update. That might be the quickest score update we've ever had. It's only 3 games today. That's it.
I hope it's the quickest thing we have all year. I mean, like MLB, can we not with 3 games on a Monday?
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that it's Monday is tough enough. Like, give me some baseball to watch, man.
Yeah, right. Yeah, listen, it's more stuff that we can yell at Manfred about, right? Just
exactly.
Okay, let's go to out number 1. Into the 1-2-3 inning. Mid-season awards. So, you kind of wanted to approach this as like who we think is going to win the awards at the end of the year, not if the season ended today, who would win the awards. So we kind of talked about MVP a little bit, and I think really the favorites have almost sort of separated themselves. The National League is a bit of a tighter race, I think, than the American League. I think Aaron Judge is somewhat running away with it in the American League at the moment, given the last 2 months at the level of that he's played. In the National League, I guess it's Ohtani and Ozuna and whoever else. But let's talk about Cy Young here. So in the American League, I think the 2 betting favorites at the moment right now are Corbin Burnes and Tariq Skubal. Who do you like? What are you thinking right now as far as Cy Young awards halfway through the season?
So I love Tariq Skubal. I think in the AL, that's probably the guy I'd give the nod to. Now, the concern that I would have is like the Orioles are probably going to do a lot more winning over the next 3 months than the Tigers will. And you definitely have some old bozos out there that are going to worry about which pitcher's got more wins. So in that sense, like I could see Burnes kind of ending up winning that argument. But for me, it's got to be Scooble. I mean, 9-3 with a 2.32, doing that in the American League with what the American League is right now, just really damn impressive. You know, whip under 112 strikeouts at the midway point. He's been nothing but dominant, and you know he's doing it on a team that's mediocre at best. I hope that doesn't cost him because he's been really special. So to me, it's Scooble. You know, as far as like other pitchers that I think could get involved, obviously Corbin Burns is one of them. But you know, like Garrett Crochet to me is an interesting one to discuss as well, because Garrett Crochet, like in terms of like the actual stuff that he brings to the table, it's obviously absurd. And he's putting up great numbers while pitching for the worst team in baseball. He's going to get traded. And so when Garrett Crochet is a Padre here in a few weeks, like those numbers are all of a sudden, people are going to start paying attention to him. And he's going to move into a new league. So, I mean, Garrett Crochet.
When he's a Padre.
Well, obviously, then he'd be in the NL discussion, right? But like, if he stays in the NL, if he goes into the NL, I think he could be a dark horse. Yeah. I mean, Mike, like, let's be honest, right? He's going to be a Padre. Like, you know, I'm right.
he's gonna be a Padre. Let's just be the top guy in the market at every position is just destined to be a San Diego Padre.
Well, and they'll overpay and they'll put themselves in a position where Mackenzie Gore, C.J. Abrams, and James Wood are out there for Washington while Juan Soto plays for the Yankees.
That's right. See, there you go. Yeah, look, I think like so here's what I'm looking at right now, and it's really like Garrett Crochet is seemingly he's got the fourth best odds to win the American League Cy Young at the moment. It's Garrett Crochet. He's behind Tarek Skubal. He's behind Corbin Burns, and he's behind Tanner Houck, who has had a great season for the Boston Red Sox. Yeah, you bring up a good point about Corbin Burns and how the voters might view him from like a win perspective. I think here's the thing. I think for that reason, Corbin Burns and Tarek Skubal statistically are pretty close, right? Like Skubal has him in strikeouts. The record is the same. Innings pitched. You know, Skubal has one less game under his belt at this point. He's got less walks. They're very, very similar statistically. If the Orioles are the number one seed in the American League and the Tigers don't make the playoffs and they're statistically close, I kind of think that they'll edge Burns. Like that's just kind of how I feel about it. And I think like the favorite right now, I agree with you, I think should probably be Skubal, but I also think that like they're so close. Like Corbin Burns' ERA is slightly better, but they're so statistically similar that it's like I said, if the Orioles are up here and the Tigers are down here, or they're somewhere in the middle of the American League, they missed the playoffs by 2.5 games or whatever the hell. Like, I just think they're going to edge Burns because he's playing for the playoff team, and that might be it. Like, is that valid, or is that not like a thing if they're statistically close here?
That's totally a thing. Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was talking about. I mean, that's the thing. Because it's not just Burns pitching for a playoff team, it's also the wins that he'll rack up for his record once they get down the stretch, you know? So, yeah, I mean, I wish that mattered less, but it definitely does matter.
Yeah. So, yeah, I would say if I were to pick somebody right now, my prediction would probably be Burns. I would probably go Burns.
Fair enough. Yeah. I don't think you're going wrong there at
all. So, and as unfortunate as it is, you know, I think my boy is kind of fallen out of the race after he's had 2 really bad starts in a row. And I think that ship may have sailed unless he like dominates for the next 2 months. Also, I think Luis Gil is probably dropped out. It's a shame. It really is. But I think that's kind of where we're at now.
I I hate to say it. I did ask. I did warn you to pump the brakes on the Cy Young talk 3-4 weeks ago because he's a rookie, man. This stuff happens. He'll be okay.
Yeah, I know. I was expecting that too. I was expecting you to say something like that as well. So I was expecting a little "I told you so." I was hoping maybe I would dodge it, but I guess
Hey, listen, when we start getting into our preseason predictions, I got a few that were way off, so you'll have your chance.
yeah, see, I can throw it right back at you. All right, so let's talk about the National League here. So right now, the betting favorites look to be, and I got to give you kudos on this one. Zach Wheeler and Ranger Suarez, teammates, really at the top of the list here for the National League. Tyler Glass now is third on that list. Again, consensus. And then after that, you're getting 3 straight Braves led by Chris Sale, who you talked about in the preseason as like, don't sleep on Chris Sale. It's Chris Sale, Max Fried, and Ronaldo Lopez, who have all been outstanding. So where do you see the National League going right now? What do you think happens at the end of the year?
To me, it's got to be Glass now as the favorite. For reasons that are somewhat similar to what we talked about with Burns. But part of it with Glass now is like, I think, he hasn't at times this season, his record, for example, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, he's been great, but like sometimes it hasn't gotten as much attention. Like he's sitting there at 8-5, and at one point he lost like 4 decisions in a row because he went a month without getting a single run of support behind him.
Yeah.
And just like playing the numbers with him and that lineup, like that's going to change. But the reason I like it with Glass now is he's got the sexiness factor with all the strikeouts, right? He still has the whip under 1. I think the ERA the ERA ballooned a little bit. He's had a couple starts recently that weren't quite as great, but like the stuff with him, you just know is going to consistently play. And so maybe I'm a little bit of a homer, but Glasnow is going to be pitching with a great lineup behind him, giving him better support as the season goes along. If he stays healthy, I think he should be the favorite. Ranger Suarez has been the best pitcher in the National League so far, and I give him a ton of credit for it, but we started to see some regression hit him, kind of like some of these Yankees arms in his last start.
He didn't pitch well last night, really.
Yeah, and like I just don't think Ranger Suarez is like – I think he's a good pitcher, but like he's not a Cy Young guy over a full season.
Right.
He's just
I agree. Right.
Wheeler belongs in the conversation. Sale, the question's health, but I was damn right about Sale.
You were, yeah.
And then obviously Max Fried's a dude. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think here's the thing. I do think that when you're looking at Glass now, as it compares to somebody like Wheeler, I think that that's something that can genuinely be considered. Like, and here's the thing. Like at this point, we're halfway through the year. There's so much baseball left to be played. But Zach Wheeler, I think, has been considered by most to be, I don't know, one of the 3 or 4 maybe best pitchers in baseball for the last couple of years now. And he's yet to win a Cy Young. Like, just general intuition for me almost feels like, okay, Ranger Suarez is kind of coming back down to earth. Tyler Glass now has an ERA that still is hovering at about 3.2-ish, right? I just feel like Zach Wheeler is the front runner now, and I think if just what he does is continue at his current pace, I think he'll probably end up winning the award just almost by default, right? Because what Glass now has on him now is strikeouts 100%, but ERA, Zach Wheeler's a legit half point better than Glass now at this point, and they have the same amount of starts, so there is something to be said about that. And I also think, like, we talk a lot about like media perceptions of players and, how they kind of like to like make stories out of stuff. We see it all the time in sports. It seems like where, like maybe they don't pick the like clear, like I shouldn't say clear cut, but maybe they don't click, they don't pick the most deserving guy, but they'll pick a guy that's close that creates the better story. I kind of think that Zach Wheeler is more of the guy that's like, all right, he's been great for a while. It's his turn to kind of get it. I don't know. I don't know that that's,
I
I just kind of get that gut feeling that Wheeler's gonna grab it.
So gut feelings are gut feelings, right? They can't be argued with because they're feelings. That being said, I don't agree with you on the narrative portion of it. Like Glasnow's never won one either.
Right. Yeah.
And Glasnow's in the big glamorous market in LA. So like to me, the narrative is like I don't think the narrative is going to affect the race if it comes down to those two. But I think part of it for me is like Glasnow pitches in a much better pitching environment, and will pitch in that, especially as the summer goes along, right? Like the hot months in Philly, the ball flies out of that ballpark.
Right.
Half a run in ERA is not as big of a gap as it sounds like. So, especially when Glasnow's got a 24 strikeout lead on him, he's got the better whip. I think right now, like I give the edge to Glasnow partially because he's pitching at Dodger Stadium the rest of the year. The other thing, though, that I think we have to talk about with the Phillies in general, I want to like walk you through their schedule for the next 6 weeks, and this is part of why. Like, I'm not saying sell the Phillies. Like the Phillies are very good, but if there was a time to like shed a little bit of Phillies stock, this is what they have coming up: at Wrigley against the Cubs, at Atlanta, home against the Dodgers. Okay. Then you get Oakland and Pittsburgh. Then it's at Minnesota. Then you host Cleveland, who I'm willing to admit might be good. And then you host the Yankees. And then you go to Seattle. And then you go to LA. And then you go to Arizona. And oh, by the way, they have 3 more series left with the Braves.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that they're going to like fall apart, right? But we talked a lot early this season about how April and May for Philly was so light. And now I think this is where it's like, okay, now I really need you to prove it to me. Like, can you go through a month that takes you, like over the next month and change, you're going to play 2 series against the Dodgers. You're going to play a series in Atlanta. You're going to play a series against the Yankees. Like, this is where they can show me something. You know what I mean? And so it's a little bit of a tangent, but the reason I go on that tangent is I just like what's ahead for Glasnow better. But no, I mean, look, would I be surprised if Wheeler won the award? No, not at all.
Yeah. No, right. No, and I don't think you're wrong about Glasnow either. I mean, it's definitely you make a very, very fair point. And we've been kind of talking about it all year about like Glasnow's been healthy. What it seems like is like the first time in his career where he's like actually fully healthy, and he looks like a stud. Like he's striking out guys. I mean, when he played for Tampa Bay, he was a Yankee killer. I hated facing him every year. Thank goodness the Yankees at least got a little bit of a piece of him when the Dodgers came over. But certainly Chris Sale is firmly in this conversation, I think. Like that's this could be a very interesting story if he comes back and he's ripping a 2.79 ERA right now, 118 strikeouts, fielding independent pitching. He's leading baseball 2.32. And I'm not saying that that's like a super deciding factor, but he leads the National League in WHIP. Yeah. He leads the National League in wins. He's firmly in this conversation, dude. Like I'm telling you, I got to give you a lot of props on that. That was a good call.
And he was what, 50-1 preseason?
I think he was.
And I think my exact words around it were, I'm like, this is Chris Sale, man. Like, if he's healthy and he's Chris Sale moving over to the National League, this is what it looks like. I mean, the guy, look, I mean, at this point, he's a wily vet, right? Like, the stuff's not quite the same as what it was, but there's some Randy Johnson to it where it's like, I don't care if he's 45. That's not a comfortable at bat.
Yeah, right.
It never will be.
Yeah, and I think that was the pushback on a lot of people was they were saying, like, listen, this is a 35-year-old Chris Sale who's spent the last half decade hurt, back and forth. And when he was back, he wasn't the Chris Sale that we knew. I mean, for all we knew, Chris Sale was washed. And now, you know what I mean? And now he comes, of course, he goes to Atlanta of all places and starts dominating again, because where else would he go and dominate? But so interesting stuff there. So let's talk about rookie of the year. Because I think the rookie of the year, especially in the National League, okay, the rookie of the year conversation in the National League, I think, is so unbelievably interesting, because we kind of went into it thinking, okay, it's virtually Yamamoto or bust. Yamamoto, I don't really think is in the conversation anymore, unfortunately, because of the injury, right?
Right.
We're kind of looking at it as you're getting a number with a minus in front of it for Paul Skeens at virtually every platform. I mean, I'm not saying that that's crazy, but when I'd be lying if I said when I looked up the betting favorites now, I was stunned to see Skeens at the top of the list. I still thought it would be Imanaga. But what do you think?
So I looked at the players before looking at the betting odds.
Yeah.
And when I looked at the players, what's interesting about, well, first of all, I want to start with one general thought. I think both rookie of the years are going to be won by pitchers this year. Which I don't know like when that last happened, but in the NL, I was expecting to see Shota Imanaga still at the top.
Yeah.
And Skeens like kind of right there with him.
Yeah.
And I was ready to come on and say, well, my pick is probably Skeens. But if you were to ask me to give out that award at this point in the season, like, and you might think I'm a home, the answer is Gavin Stone. Like, it just is. He's 9-2 with a 2.73. Like, he's been dominant.
Yeah.
Because Gavin Stone is, I would say he's probably top 7 in the NL right now for Cy Young.
Yeah, he's plus 3,500 right now on DraftKings.
Absurd. Like, I just think, look, if
he's still behind Yamamoto, by the way, I'll say that.
Well, I'm looking
behind Yamamoto.
So I think what you're looking at might be a little bit dated, because I'm looking at DraftKings like right now, and Stone's 22-1, and I'm showing Yamamoto 75-1. So I think they've kind of smartened up to that a little bit. But Skeens minus 270. Jackson Merrill is the only position player that I think really belongs in the conversation. I'll give him that. He's been awesome for them, and he's a guy that like you just watch him and you watch like his bat path, and like you just see it. Like he just looks like a ball player. He's going to be around a long time.
I agree.
But I think Skeens wins the award because I think Skeens is already one of the best pitchers in baseball. And I think like that's going to continue. He's the big story. He's got the sexy stuff. But I got to give Gavin Stone some love, man. I mean, like I've seen people putting out what they think their NL All-Star roster should be and not including him on the list. And it's like, guys, I get that like last year in his limited action, he didn't look very good, but like he was a top pitching prospect for the Dodgers. How often do top Dodgers pitching prospects not pan out? It's pretty fucking rare. Like, we should not be surprised that Gavin Stone is this good. Yeah. Because it's kind of what was expected of him if we can look past the fact that his debut didn't go all that well. Clayton Kershaw's didn't either. But, so anyway, I decided to make the NL Rookie of the Year conversation my, like, let me get up on my platform and remind everybody of what Gavin Stone's doing, because it's a little disrespectful for me to see Stone at 22-1 when like he's top 6 or 7 in almost every pitching category in the National League.
Yeah. No, you bringing that up actually is fairly interesting, because you're right in that fact. I was looking at this list and I wasn't even considering him. Like that's, and I think that's the mindset of a lot of people now, is like Gavin Stone is often forgotten in that conversation because what we've seen from Paul Skeens, what we've seen from Shota Imanaga, especially early on in the season, was so eye-popping, and that Gavin Stone was almost hidden by how good the Dodgers are, right? He was hidden behind Yamamoto and everything that was going on with Ohtani and everything. Like, at least that's how I kind of perceive it now. I mean, it's almost like Gavin Stone gets forgotten about when it comes to a national conversation. And Dodger fans really are the only ones kind of paying attention to say, like, this guy's kind of dominating since, this year he's been kind of great.
Well, which is it's amazing because it's not like he's playing in Cleveland or Seattle.
No.
You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
you don't usually see that. Like Gavin Stone in May, 3-1 with a 1.97. Gavin Stone in June, 4-0 with a 1.97. He put up exactly a 1.97 ERA in each month.
Mhm.
Over those 2 months combined, 52 strikeouts, 13 walks. I mean, he's been great.
Yes.
So I just want to show him a little bit of love because the other thing too is like if you look at these starts, I mean, you've got at the Yankees mixed in there, you got a trip to Coors Field mixed in there, you got the Diamondbacks, the Braves, at the Mets. Like I'm not saying that like that's not like a murderer's row, but there's like it's not like his starts are all lining up to be at home against the Marlins.
No, you're right. And listen, we all know what the Yankees are. We all know what the Braves are. Obviously, the Rockies in Colorado, pitching at elevation is always tough, no matter how bad the Rockies seem to be. And with the Mets playing, we like to crap on the Mets a lot because it's fun. But the way the Mets are playing, like that's a legit start. Like that's a legit quality start against a quality baseball team at the moment. So, 100% right on there. Yeah, and I'm with you. Just to almost speed through it. I think Paul Skeens is going to end up winning the award.
I do.
And
yeah,
he's just so like Skeens, and we talked about this when we talked about Skeens, however long ago it was. It was maybe a month ago or something, or maybe even more. Paul Skeens looks like Ohtani and Judge. Like he just like, and if you understand what I'm saying, that he just looks different, right?
totally.
He's just like obviously the velocity is there and the stuff is there and all that stuff. And partially that's part of the reason why I'm picking the guy who I'm picking in the American League. And it's not to the same degree as Paul Skeens, but I think just as far as like what I can see going forward, I don't know that I'm not picking Mason Miller in the American League. As much as it pains me to not pick Luis Heel, right? I think I can buy Mason Miller being more consistent throughout the rest of the year than Luis Heel. And I love, believe you know how much I love Luis Heel. Even through his bad starts, I love Luis Heel. Mason Miller, I think by the beginning of next year is a top 2 or 3 closer in baseball, and he might already be one. Like that's kind of where I see that. I think if you consider that, I think Mason Miller's the guy. That's me.
So I don't, I'm not going to throw any cold water at all on the Mason Miller hype because he has been that good. I think Mason Miller is deserving of it. I just think that like there's zero chance that a dude in Oakland wins it.
Yeah, you think so?
And like maybe I don't know, maybe that's the wrong attitude to have about it, but like it's just not going to happen. I think right now I'd probably still lean to Luis Heel just because I think that starts like is not enough for me to totally come off that wagon. I'm still pretty high on Wyatt Langford. He was the guy I picked preseason to win the award. I just love his game, man. Like I think he's a stud, and I think we're gonna see him like kind of get better as the years gone on, which is kind of
he
what
hit
he's
for the cycle last night. I mean,
he's just an electric player. So I think Wyatt Langford, especially if the Rangers continue to improve, he's an interesting one. Colton Cowser, certainly an interesting entry into that discussion as well. Simeon Woods Richardson in Minnesota has like quietly been awesome. He's kind of been like the Gavin Stone of the AL a little bit, where he hasn't been getting the love, but he's been pitching for it. But Wilyer Abreu has been very good. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's Heel or Langford. Those are probably my 2 picks right now, and I'll go with Heel.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes me feel good. I mean, look, like Luis Gil, I think, you know, if he can continue pitching at a pace where, like, maybe he's not dominating like he was in May, but he's not, you know, awful like he was the last 2 weeks. Like, if he just kind of settles in somewhere in the middle there, I think it would be pretty hard to argue that it's not him. I just like, from my perspective, and listen, you bring up a very good point about like some dude in Oakland just not just not winning the award. I get that. I truly do. Like, that actually resonates. It does. Um, but like I said, when I watch
I would
Mason
love to
Miller,
see it. I just can't see it happening.
yeah, no, I completely get it. When I watch Mason Miller pitch, it looks different. Like that's the thing. Like, it just, like, 104. Like, as much as we like to glorify guys that throw over 100, right? 104 consistently doesn't happen that much. It just doesn't, right? You get 99 and 100 all the time now. 104 with a 92-mile-an-hour slider is different. Like, that's just different, dude. So, which is why, and listen, I say this about Mason Miller all the time. I don't know why he just doesn't pump 104 all the time. Why does he even have a breaking pitch? I'm serious. Like, am I totally wrong for saying that? Like, I can understand the naivete of me saying something of like, why does a guy even have breaking stuff? But there's got to be some sort of velocity threshold that once you get over it and you can hit it consistently, you don't even need a secondary pitch. Is that stupid?
Um, yes, but almost no. I mean, look, like I from like a fun perspective, I would love to watch that. Right, just watch
Yeah.
them pump one over every single pitch. Major league hitters will catch up eventually, like they just will. But I like the thought. I think it's a fun thought.
Yeah. All right. So that's that. Let's go to the second out here. Let's talk quickly about the Houston Astros before we really dive into what we did preseason. So the Astros are having a whale of a month, or had a whale of a month, I should say, as of right now. Let me actually pull it up. See, I would love to be prepared for the segment today, but of course I'm not. Right now, the Astros 43 and 41. They're only 3 games back of the American League West, behind the Seattle Mariners. They are looking much better than what they did early on in the season. So, Dalton, take it away. What do you think is happening with the Astros here? What do you take away from the great month of June that they had, and where can that take them towards the end of the season?
Well, I think the Astros and Yankees are inverse forces in the universe. That when one of them regresses to the mean positively, the other one will regress to the mean negatively. Uh, No, I mean, but I do think that's what it is, right? This is an Astros team that when we talked about them in April and May, what I kept coming back to is this team is too talented to be this bad,
Yeah.
and that division is too winnable for them to fall out of it, and that's kind of what we've seen. Like the pitching has come around a little bit. Brian Abreu's got that ERA in the bullpen down under 3 now. Josh Hader's got that ERA back down under 4 now. Bullpens figure themselves out over time, and if they don't, you find guys who figure it out over time.
Yeah.
Hunter Brown has started to put it together. Like the rotation is suddenly clicking a little bit. The bats are doing kind of what you expect the Astros bats to do. And obviously getting rid of Jose Abreu seems to have been a catalyst for that, because he had become a total black hole on that team. Even Spencer Arrighetti has looked pretty decent recently. So I think it's just one of those things that if you give a good team 162 games to figure it out, they're eventually going to figure it out. And I don't think any of us thought the Astros were bad.
Yeah.
So look, I mean, they still got some ground to cover, right? This is a team that's now 43 and 41, but this is the first time all season they've been over 500 as of this week. But you look up now and they're 3 games back, 9-1 in their last 10, 3 games back of Seattle. And they are plus 35 in run differential to Seattle's plus 6. You tell me which one of those teams you trust moving forward. I would make the Astros big favorites to win that division, which is why we grabbed them at plus money weeks ago. So that's my team.
No, I agree. I love Pete Alonso as a trade fit for them. Now, it's tough to imagine that now because the Mets are playing really well. But I think you and I are both kind of on the same page about the Mets, where like we don't really buy it. Like this is just kind of a really fun stretch with the whole Grimace thing and all of that stuff.
Yeah, they
Pete
had
Alonso,
their Linsanity run.
yeah, it's right, and New York is familiar with that.
Yeah.
Pete Alonso, I think, is a phenomenal fit for that baseball team. They have to improve at first base. John Singleton is not the guy over there. As much as I like him as like, an occasional pinch hit bat with some pop, like I can get behind that with him maybe, but I think, you're going to look at the trade market, you're going to look at the Goldschmidts and the Alonsos, and I think like you add one of those guys to that lineup, and I think your point even gets strengthened in that sense.
Yeah, no, I think Alonso makes a ton of sense there. I mean, even just based on the fact that he's a right-handed power bat. I mean,
Yeah.
If you're a right-handed power bat, there's not many better ballparks to hit him than Houston. So, no, I think that makes an absolute ton of sense. I could also see them poking around in like lesser parts of the market as well. Like I could see them going and getting like a Lane Thomas in Washington, not necessarily to play first base, but kind of just in general. I could see them seeing how the Giants feel about moving like a Lamont Wade but I think they're going to be active in finding one or two more bats, and I think they'll succeed in doing so.
Yeah.
But I agree, Pete Alonso makes a ton of sense there. Another name that comes to mind for me, the Rays are 500. If they slide, would they move Yandy Diaz?
That's an interesting thought. That's a really interesting thought. And Yandy Diaz is not like, I don't think anybody on the Rays almost at any point ever is impervious to a trade. Like
definitely
they will sell anybody. It doesn't matter who they are. Like doesn't matter who they are. They will sell anybody. So that's an interesting thought. And that's something I haven't heard before.
Or Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
Vladdy Jr. Yeah.
This one.
Vladdy Jr. is and Vladdy Jr. to me ranks up there with Pete Alonso as like best fits there. Like, and Vladdy Jr., I mean, we were kind of hard on Vladdy Jr. a couple of weeks ago, but he's actually put together a fairly decent season so far. His OPS is near 840 or something like that. So, and he just had a whale of a series against the Yankees. So I just saw it firsthand where it just seemed like every ball put in play was a hit. I mean, there was an at bat where he literally golfed one out of the dirt and ended up hitting a double down the left field line like his dad did. Like it was the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen. So I do think, and Vladdy, I think is going to get traded. Like I'm kind of sold on the point that like, and we'll touch on the Blue Jays in a minute, but like, I think the Blue Jays are going to be heavy sellers. I do. And I think lineup and pitching staff, I think Barrios could be available. There's going to be guys that they're just going to offload on that ball club.
I think the writing's on the wall with them. Like at this point, and they're a team that I was very wrong on. But at this point, like the talent has not panned out. It just isn't working for whatever reason. And they have a lot to sell. Like if they play their cards right, they could rebuild, they could retool this thing in a hurry. But I mean, I don't know. We'll talk about the trade deadline more and more over time, but I think there are certain moves that like we already kind of see coming. At least I already kind of see coming, but I think you do too, right? Like I think we know. I don't want to say we know, but I think like Bo Bichette is probably going to be a Dodger. Like I'm just thinking through things that make sense to me, right?
Yeah. Right. Yep.
I think Vladdy or Alonso, one of them is going to be an Astro. Like I think the Padres are going to sell everything they have for Garrett Crochet and or Luis Robert. I could see the Dodgers making a run at Robert too, but the Dodgers don't like the Dodgers aren't as good of a trade partner for the White Sox because the White Sox are crazy and the Padres are crazy. I think you know what I mean.
The Padres will trade Jackson Merrill to the White Sox for Luis Robert or something like that.
The Padres will trade Ethan Salas. They'll trade everything they have in that system. Because they're hell-bent on winning right this second, and they don't give a shit what 2025, 26, and 27 look like. Like, they just don't. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm really excited to get into more and more trade talk here.
Yeah.
But to answer the question, yeah, the Blue Jays are. I think they might be the biggest seller at this year's deadline. I agree.
They really could be, and if they're smart, they do it now, because I don't know that like the league, and again, I don't know this, right? I'm not in front offices. I don't really know how they think, but I think people are still kind of sold that Bo Bichette is a star.
I am.
And that Vladdy Jr. is a star. Like you could still probably get a legit haul for those two guys, even if their production level is below what their expectations were, right? Like if they're smart, they do it now. Don't wait until the market catches up to you.
Yeah, I mean they should be calling Seattle and asking about Seattle's top prospects for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Right? I mean, I think that's kind of I think one of the worst kept secrets in baseball right now, in my opinion. And it's an opinion, so maybe it's not a worst kept secret, but like one of those, like one of Alonso or Guerrero, I think ends up in Seattle and the other ends up in Houston. That's what I've decided.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. I think you could easily draw those conclusions. And with that, let's go to the third out, and let's talk about some of this stuff. So I have my predictions, my preseason predictions, and I have your preseason predictions, my friend. And needless to say, there's some stuff that we got right, and there's some stuff that we got wrong. One of the things that I think I did get right is, and I shouldn't say that I got it right, but I did predict the Yankees to be the number 1 seed in the American League, and they look like they could hit that title. They look like they could. So here's what I had. So I had the Yankees at 1, the Astros 2, Twins 3, the Texas Rangers 4, the Orioles 5, and the Mariners 6. I think my only real big miss is Texas. Texas really doesn't look like a playoff team at this point, or I mean, they could fight for a wild card spot, but really not much going on there. And then in the National League, it's Braves, Dodgers, Cubs, Phillies, Diamondbacks, Padres for me in the National League. So again, I think, I don't know that I have like a big miss there. I mean, you consider the Diamondbacks a miss at this point? Like, I don't know.
I mean, so we talked last time about the National League wild card race, right? Like,
Yeah.
The only teams you could have put in a wild card spot in the National League and say like, "Oh, I was wrong," are Miami and Colorado, right?
Right.
So like outside of those two teams, and the fact that like the Dodgers are going to win the NL West,
Yeah.
Outside of that, I don't think we really know anything yet. And you'll notice that I did not mention the Phillies winning the National League East. I think that division is still up for grabs. Like, Atlanta's pitching staff is really good. They have a lot of games with Philly left. And Philly has already run through the easy part of their schedule. So I'm not saying that I still think Atlanta is going to win, but I think that division's not over.
Yeah.
So I think the NL, like, I don't really know that I'll put it this way. For me personally, the only thing that I'm probably flipping is I think I had Philly in a wild card spot. I had Atlanta winning the division. At this point, the safer prediction is probably Philly winning the division. But other than that, I mean, sorry, the biggest surprises for me, Mike, and I think you're about to say it. It's Milwaukee.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was actually even going to ask you too, like, could we consider at this point, like, obviously we with what the Brewers are doing, I think neither one of us expected that. Another miss by us might be the Cubs. Like, the Cubs are 11.5 back. They're in last place in the NL Central right now. And the Brewers have a 6.5 game lead in that division. Like, I think we're kind of entering into territory of, like, if Milwaukee doesn't win that division, we'll be shocked. Like, I think that's kind of the territory we're entering into. I'm almost ready to consider the Cubs a miss on this one.
I mean
they're 39 and 46 at this point.
Yeah, they're third from the bottom in the NL right now.
Yeah.
They've been bad. I mean, the run differential's negative for them. I mean, like I'll put it this way: like we don't really have any evidence that they're better than the Nationals right
No, we
now.
don't. You're right.
I mean,
We don't.
the Nationals have a better record. The Nationals have a better run differential. Um, I mean, the Giants have a better record and a better run differential.
Yeah.
Like the Cubs are not. I don't know. I will say, like, if you ask me how that division shakes out, I think at this point Milwaukee's got to be the pick to win it.
Yeah.
I have a sneaking suspicion that the Cubs are going to get hot at some point. The problem for the Cubs is like, man, do they sell? Like,
right.
Because they might have to, and then obviously, we're getting like what's going to be really fascinating in the National League is we're getting to decision time for these teams.
Yeah.
And these teams have about 2 more weeks here to prove it. Because once you get to about the All-Star break, you know whether you're buying or selling. And that's where we're going to, like, some of these teams like the Cubs, the Reds, I think, are going to stand somewhat still no matter what, just because they're still young.
Yeah.
But, like, the Cubs, the Cardinals, like, those are teams with pieces to sell off. Those are also teams that, like, you could see buying if things, point the right way for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To answer your question, though, I'm not willing to say Milwaukee's a lock to win that division yet, just because I'm not sold on this offense. Like, I'm just not. But, I mean, I've been wrong about Milwaukee all year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we all have. Like, I think Milwaukee is, we all said from the beginning of this, I think you and I both had Milwaukee 3rd or 4th in the division in the preseason. Like, we genuinely expected them to hit some serious regression. Like, no, they can't possibly, based on how much they sacrificed in this line on this roster. I mean, we even played the game that you made up, whatever it was, 3 weeks ago, on how many, like, can I name the top 12 players in Brewers WAR? And like some of those guys, you're just like, who? Like, it doesn't make any sense. But yeah, no, I think, yeah, the Brewers definitely need to be considered the favorite. No, and I wouldn't consider them a lock, but like, I'm almost like, I'm at a point now where I'm like, all right, if the Brewers don't hang on, then I think I'm going to be like, well, like because at this point I expect them to win. So now I'm going to be like, all right, if they don't win, I'll be like, wow, that's not what I expected to happen. I'd be a little bit surprised.
Like at this point, if they don't win, would you call it a collapse?
Yeah, I think I would.
Interesting.
I think I would. I mean, you're probably towing the line there, but I think I would, because and a lot of that I think has to do with, like, when we look at the NL Central as a whole, like, I don't think neither one of us look at any of those teams and are just like, yeah, they're going to be world beaters. They're not, right? If the Brewers lose this division to the Pirates, like, I think we're going to say, all right, like, we all overhyped Milwaukee. They're a bust, right? I think that's kind of where we're at now, so, part of it is like, yeah, if Milwaukee doesn't win the division, like, yeah, it's a shock in their own right, but it's also like, who are you losing the division to? Are you losing it to the Cardinals, who nobody believes in, or are you losing it to the Pirates, who nobody believes in? Like, the competition, if you lost it to the Phillies, that's different, but you're losing it to a team that is perceived, especially at this point in the season, to be like, okay, they're definitely worse than you.
No, that's a really good point. That's a really good point, because that's the one thing. Like, it's really hard to think of the Brewers as a divisional lock because nobody looks at that roster and is like wowed by it, right? You look at that roster and you're like, yeah, it's an NL Central team. But then you think about it and you're like, well, okay, but you have to blow a 8.5 game lead over Pittsburgh now, a 10 game lead over Pittsburgh now.
Yeah,
like, I mean, I'm high on Pittsburgh, but geez, man, like that, yeah, it's a good point. Let's say Milwaukee doesn't win that division. Who wins it?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question. The Cubs and the Reds both really have a lot of ground to make up. They're both 11 and 11.5 games back. I might say St. Louis. Like, I really might say St. Louis. I think I believe in them offensively more than anybody else in the division, really. Like, Can they pitch? No, but Milwaukee and Pittsburgh, and especially Pittsburgh, is just as bad offensively as the Cardinals are defensively or pitching wise. Like, it just kind of depends on what you prefer. I'd probably say St. Louis, partly because they're 6.5 back, they're in second place, and because I almost kind of believed in them in the beginning of the season too. Like, I did not want to rule them out in the beginning of the season either.
No, you didn't, and I think that's the ultimate reason why we disagree here. Is I'm just not a believer in what the Cardinals are doing.
Yeah,
I think they're like
you never have been. You've been pretty steadfast on that.
They're an aging, fragile ball club.
Yeah,
that like can't pitch and really needs to stay healthy offensively to have any chance to succeed. Now, you could say the same thing about Pittsburgh in terms of like, if their big rookie arms who are throwing 100 plus get hurt, like then Pittsburgh is Pittsburgh again, for lack of a better way of saying it. But I think for me with Pittsburgh, I really want to believe, like, if Skeen stays healthy, does he finish top 5 in Cy Young? If Jared Jones stays healthy, does he finish top 15 in Cy Young? Like, Mitch Keller, like I want to believe in that pitching staff.
I know. It would be so fun to watch Paul Skeens in a playoff series, dude.
It'd be really fun to watch O'Neal Cruz in a playoff series too.
Right.
Yeah. Like I just, and Brian Reynolds, I think he deserves some success.
I agree.
I want it for Pittsburgh, but I don't know that I believe in it for Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Cincinnati to me is like a younger St. Louis, where like I actually think that offense has some really fun pieces.
Me too.
But there's not enough pitching depth at all. I think Cincinnati's destined to like kind of sit in the middle all year. I get it. They're 11.5 out. If you were to walk up to me from the future and say the Brewers are not winning the NL Central, I think I'd put some money down on the Cubs still.
That's really interesting.
I still think I just think that I just think as far as like the well-roundedness of the roster, I think there's the most potential there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I think that question is going to have, like you said before, that question is going to have a much clearer answer in 2 weeks.
100%.
Like, if the Cubs offload Ian Happ, they offload Cody Bellinger, like they dump a bunch of those guys, then okay, they're done. Like unless like all of a sudden Pete Crow Armstrong becomes, Mike Trout in the next, half of the season, then I think they're out. You know what I mean? So, but it is interesting that you say that. So here's what you had, by the way. Dodger in the National League was Dodgers, Braves, Cubs, Phillies, Padres, Giants for you. You and I kind of sat in very similar positions in the National League. In the American League, I don't want to give you too much flack on this because I think, like I said, you and I are also very, very similar on this. You just replaced essentially the Rangers for me with the Blue Jays. Like, you and I are kind of in similar position here. You had Astros, Blue Jays, Twins, Orioles, Yankees, Mariners. You had less faith in the Yankees than I did. You had more faith in the Blue Jays than I did. But look, it's tough for me to fault you for liking the Blue Jays, because when you looked at the Blue Jays on paper, they were a pretty complete ball club. Like, they are, and they kind of looked at it as just like, okay, Bichette, stud, Guerrero, stud, Springer has always been consistent, right? Like, you're kind of looking at that. They had the pitching staff, Gausman, Barrios, Kikuchi, like, you had guys there. And it just hasn't worked out. And we kind of talked about it before. I think they're big time sellers at the deadline too.
Yeah, the Blue Jays, I just didn't see Dalton Varsho batting 197. I didn't see Alejandro Kirk batting 200. I didn't see David Schneider batting 214. I didn't see Kevin Kiermaier being at 190. I didn't see Justin Turner being at 248. I didn't see George Springer being at 214.
George Springer was the lowest rated hitter in the American League until this weekend. He was awful this year.
It's just really ugly. It's an entire team offensively of underperforming players.
Yeah.
And what's disheartening about it, if you're a Blue Jays fan, is what the pitching staff has actually done. The pitching staff has been pretty good. Seriously. Chris Bassett with a 3.24, Barrios with a 3.38, Kikuchi with a 4.18. I mean, Gaussman's been kind of the one who struggled and hasn't been what they expected him to be. But the pitching staff's been okay. I mean, Yariel Rodriguez pitched great for them today.
Yeah.
But it's just they're not hitting. They're not hitting. The bullpen hasn't been consistent. The starters have been just okay. But I don't know. The Blue Jays to me are in that sweet spot of seller where it's I think they are in a unique position to rebuild a team right now. Because these are all guys: Bassett, Barrios, Kikuchi, Gaussman. You could trade all four of them. They're all veterans. They're all guys that'll net you something, right? And then you look at the other side around. I mean, obviously we talked about Guerrero and Bichette. You're telling me a team won't take a shot at Justin Turner to play to DH for him, right, and get a little something out of that,
right? Yeah.
You're telling me a team that wants a defense first center fielder won't take a shot at Kiermaier or Varsho.
Yep.
Team that's desperate for catching might go after Alejandro Kirk. Now they might want to hold on to some of these guys, right? I'm not saying or Danny Jansen. I'm not saying that they're going to shed all of these guys, but I mean, if they were to package some of these guys together and bait a team like the Padres or the Mariners to the table, teams that like to overpay, just saying, right?
You're right. I know.
So, I think this is a big make or break month for the Blue Jays in that sense. Who, by the way, I will gladly admit I was very wrong on the Blue Jays. I bought into this talent. I bought into them as a team that was in a good buy low spot that nobody was talking about. Mm-hmm. They're just not good. They're just not a good ball player.
They're not. But like I said, it's kind of tough to fault you for that because here's the thing. People have been believing in the Blue Jays it wasn't even just this year. It was the past several years.
Yep.
Right? When they traded for Matt Chapman and everything, people were just okay, here we go. The Blue Jays are finally at that peak. They got Barrios. And I'm like, okay, they're starting to build something here. And it just never really amounted to anything. They could never really put it all together. I do think it's kind of funny how the most productive hitter in that lineup, maybe outside of Vladdy Jr., is Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. I do think that that's a little bit hysterical. He's hitting 300, which is, I think, kind of funny.
Yeah.
He was awful as a Yankee, and all he needed to do was get out of the Bronx for him to be successful. So enough of that. Let's talk about some awards quickly before we get into the hot corner. So MVPs, you and I both had different picks here. You and I had a different pick for every award except NL Rookie of the Year. NL Rookie of the Year, we were locked up with Yamamoto. We're going to get that wrong. I think we're both going to get AL Rookie of the Year wrong. I had Evan Carter. I don't even think he's in the conversation, even close to it, I should say. And you had Wyatt Langford, who is closer to the conversation, but I still don't think is I'll say I don't think it's likely. It's not impossible, but I don't think it's likely that he wins the award now. American League and National League Cy Young. My National League Cy Young is out of the question. I had Spencer Strider. He is out for the season. So I'm out on that. You had Tyler Glasnow in the National League. That is still very much alive, my friend. That is still very, very much alive. I think both of our American League Cy Young picks are probably out of the question now also. Pablo Lopez for me, George Kirby for you.
I do love me some George Kirby.
Yeah.
I'm a George Kirby stan. I just love a guy that does absolutely nothing but throw strikes. I just from as a former pitcher, I just respect the hell out of that guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's not in the conversation at this point.
No. And then MVP, I had Aaron Judge and Freddie Freeman. I think Aaron Judge I'm going to get right. Freddie Freeman I am certain I'm going to get wrong. You had Yordan Alvarez and Bryce Harper. Now, Bryce Harper I think is possible. I do believe. I don't know that I buy Yordan Alvarez at this point. But again, like, this is just it. We're just kind of checking in on where we were. And, listen, so we get some wrong, we get some right. I don't think Yordan Alvarez was a bad pick by any means necessary. I think when you made the pick, I actually liked it a lot. I'm like, I was surprised that the number wasn't better for him. What was Alvarez's number at the beginning of the year?
It was double digits. It was like, I think it was like 11-1, which it shouldn't. I stand by that, right? I mean, that's not what it should be. I think looking back, like, I think we have a big enough sample size now on Aaron Judge that, like, he should be the bet to win that award in the American League, like, moving forward, just period. Unless books are going to start giving out preseason odds that are like -200 or something stupid, right? But, like, if we get him before next season and he's 4-1, I'm just going to fire away on that. Like, he just shouldn't. Yeah. If he stays healthy, he's the best hitter on the planet. Like, sure, like, Ohtani can enter that conversation. Yordan Alvarez, I think, is capable of entering that conversation. Like, there are a couple guys who I think can kind of, raise their hand there, but Judge is the guy at this point.
Aaron Judge, just to give you an idea, May and June collectively, he's hitting about 400 for about 2 months.
Yeah.
Like, he's on a different planet right now. Like, he is what is keeping the Yankees afloat. Period.
Yeah.
So I love him. I do. I love him. I legitimately love him.
You know what? I love him too, because he's a Northern California kid who said, "Fuck that! I'm not going to San Francisco." So I love him for that. I also, I do have to eat a little bit more crow than you're making me eat. Okay. The Guardians.
Yeah, there you go.
Now, people who have listened to this show throughout the season, I don't know how many of you there really are, but if anybody has been listening to this show consistently throughout the season,
they know.
You heard me say a few times, talk to me on July 1st about the Cleveland Guardians. It's July 1st. The Cleveland Guardians are 52-30. Look, I think they have a bunch of guys right now who are just, like, performing way over their skis in terms of, like, the hitting for contact that they're doing. I do think that Stephen Kwan might just be another Luis Ariz, which is amazing.
He's so good, dude. He's so good.
But, like, since when is Josh Naylor this guy?
Yeah, right.
Like, Jose Ramirez doing what he's doing is not surprising. He's awesome. But, like, Josh Naylor is all of a sudden, like, I mean, he's probably going to start at first base for the National League for the American League in the All-Star game, isn't he? I mean, He's been awesome. I don't really know how they're doing it on the pitching staff-wise. Like, none of these guys are that awesome. I mean, like, Ben Lively has been dominant. Ben Lively, like, what? Yeah,
right.
They're doing all this without Bieber, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, they are.
So I'll say this, like, I'm not bought in on the talent in Cleveland, but they have my attention. Like, it's July 1st. You're 22 games over 500. You've built a 6-game lead in the division over Minnesota. You're plus 98 in run differential. So it's legitimate, right? It's a good ball club.
I think next week we should play a game of, just like we did with the Brewers, we should play a game of who leads the Guardians in WAR and see what because it can't be that different. Like, their roster's terrible, but they're still good.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are some names on there that will definitely surprise people.
Oh, I'm sorry. When we pull up and we see Tyler Freeman on that list, I'm telling you, we're going to be like, what the hell's going on here? Oh, yeah, man.
That kid Schneeman, who's come up with
Schneeman. Yeah. That is the name that can unequivocally just, like, summarize the Guardian season, is because they're getting Schneeman to be productive.
And while I'm sitting here wearing a Guardians hat that you didn't comment on, I got it in Cleveland about a week and a half ago. I went to
No.
Cleveland. I had some fantasy football commissioner duties I had to tend to. But I was in Northeast Ohio, and so my friend and I went and checked out a Guardians Blue Jays game up there. And the stadium is okay, right? Like it's the 25th one I've been to. It's nice. Like it's nothing wrong with it, but there's nothing spectacular about it. Like it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I gotta hand it to them, man. Like it was 97 degrees and humid and awful out, and that place was sold out, and not just sold out, but it was sold out and engaged with the game.
Yeah.
Like that was a great baseball environment. Like they were into it. So good for Guardians fans. First time all year, I'm going to give you all a little bit of respect. I promised you I would on July 1st. Twins are still going to win the division.
I think that deserves a round of applause. There, Dalton Brown. You came through on it. I'm proud of you. That was legit right there. I can give you. And Cleveland's a great sports city. I've been there a few times. It really is a great sports city. I'm a massive. I mean, you can see it right behind me, right here. I'm a massive Cleveland Cavalier fan for no other reason that when I started watching basketball, I was a massive LeBron fan, and then when he left, I just stuck with it. But they are a phenomenal sports city just from the passion that they get from their fan. I mean, the Browns have been terrible for how long now, and they are still, all about brownies. It's unbelievable. Okay, let's go to a score update. Again, we are still very short. Like I said, Astros, Blue Jays, that ended in a 3-1 victory for the Astros in Toronto. We're heading into the bottom of the ninth, and the Nationals and Mets are tied at 3 in Washington. So Grimace is not dead yet in New York. And then we see the Rockies with a 3-0 lead in the bottom of the third against the Milwaukee Brewers in Colorado. See, look at that. It's breezy. 3 games, that's it. All right, so let's move to Dalton's hot corner. Dalton, what do you have for us? Put some more money in our pocket.
I think I was torn between a couple different directions to potentially go here, but I think I'm going to go with my gut. I like Dodgers Diamondbacks over 8.5 tomorrow night. I think Bobby Miller. I'm a Bobby Miller guy. I love the kid.
Me too.
But he's still kind of coming. There's like some Garrett Cole to it, right? Mm-hmm. Like he's still kind of rounding back into form. He doesn't quite look like himself yet. And you look at his 2 starts since he came off the injured list at Colorado, gives up 5 earned runs. I mean, it's Coors Field, but still gives up 5 earned runs. The alarming one was his last start in Chicago against the White Sox. He lasts only 2 innings, gives up 3 runs. He's just like he's scuffling. 6 walks over those 8 innings. I think he's just not in a great spot right now. I think this is an Arizona team that's going to come into LA and give like a really focused offensive effort. I think they're going to put a lot of really good at bats on them.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to I think that their offense can hold up. On the flip side, the Dodgers, I think, are a team that's been pretty tired, to say the least. I mean, the travel for them has been completely insane. I think now you get that offense finally a chance to come home. The weather's warming up in LA. There's been a heat wave really all over the country, but the weather's warmed up out west quite a bit. And now they get to come home and face a middling righty in Ryan Nelson. I just think both of these offenses should be pretty alive in the opening game of that series. Dodgers bullpen is just kind of beat up. Arizona bullpen is just not that great. So I mean it's kind of a squarish pick, but I'd make that total 9.5, not 8.5. So give me the over.
So can we also add to this? Are you throwing Gavin Stone for Rookie of the Year?
As an official pick?
Yeah.
No, it's Skeens. Skeens is going to win. No, look, I mean, I would love to see, I would love for Stone to win it. I think he has a chance. If Skeens gets hurt or, the league catches up to him a little bit as the season goes along, Stone's not out of the question. But, if you're putting a gun to my head and asking me who's winning the award, It's Skeens. I mean, Mike, Skeens might win the Cy Young.
Yeah.
Like, if things break his way, like, the kid's awesome.
He's so gross.
Yeah. I can't go against Skeens.
Yeah. Yeah. I listen, I just wanted to get a gauge, see how confident you were feeling, see if it was hot corner worthy, and it doesn't seem like it is. That's fair enough.
It's not.
All right. So that does it for us. Actually, I do want to point this out, by the way. And you knew, I think knowing me as well as you know me, you knew I was going to bring this up. So yesterday I accomplished a feat that I didn't know that I would accomplish. I am now the undisputed champion of the Survivor Pool in its second iteration. I just want to say congratulations to me. I'd like to thank my entire family, my wife, everybody. I'm feeling pretty good today, Dalton Brown. I feel very accomplished after that.
Well deserved. Well deserved. The Phillies made you sweat, but they got it done for you this week.
They did. I would have burned Citizens Bank Park to the ground if they lost 3 out of 4 at home to the Marlins to screw me. I would have lost my mind.
I believe you. And I would have been just fine with my Braves pick if they didn't go for that 1-game series in Chicago, that makeup game, and lose 1-0. That's what got me there.
Yeah.
Because other than that, they played 500 ball and whatever. But the reality is, I think you did a better job of managing the teams you had available. I would have loved to have had the Phillies available this week, but I picked them last week. So well deserved. Fun that it came down to the wire between us. New week, new contest starting this week.
Yeah.
And hopefully this time we'll get you back.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, if I can help it, and it's no disrespect to your buddies, I don't know them from a hole in the wall. I really don't. But and much respect to them, and especially for you for inviting me to participate in it. It's very, very fun. But I hope it's between you and me every time we do this. I think it's better for the show, really. I mean,
it makes for fun for the show for sure.
So, all right, that does it for us. I'm Mike Guido. That's Dalton Brown. Every Monday, 8:00 Eastern on the Grid Network here. It's the Bicoastal Baseball Podcast, the only exclusive baseball podcast on the Grid Network. Again, we'll see you next week.